Gotta be honest, I think I'm starting to get annoyed with the constant arguing online about which camera brand is better or which new piece of gear is gonna change photography forever. When I started out, all I wanted to do is get out and capture my adventures with friends. And as gear becomes more and more of a focus, I think that it's starting to take away from that original sentiment. But every once in a while, a piece of gear comes out that I think breaks through the noise. And today we're gonna be talking about one of my favorite new lenses that has actually changed the way that I'm creating. That lens is a Tamron 35 to 150 millimeter f2 to 2.8. This is my long-term review after using this lens for over a year now on my commercial and my personal projects. While I am a full-time creative, I'm not a major pixel peeper, so this review is coming purely from my experiences and thoughts while using this lens for over a year now. It's been a little hectic in life and work lately, so me and my little puppy Luna in there decided to hop in the truck and head to one of our favorite places just west of Calgary here and kind of get out in the mountains while we're shooting this video.
Hey, how are you?
Pretty crazy living out here in Calgary, about 45 minutes from home, and I am pretty much in the Rockies, and the edge of Banff National Park is just coming up here. First thing first is that this was a huge innovation from Tamron. You've probably thought to yourself since clicking on this video that you've never seen that focal length in a lens before, and that's right, there's really nothing else like this lens on the market today. For some reason in my career, I never really got on board with using a 24-70 myself. I was using a 50 millimeter to kind of cover that mid-range, and then a wide angle and a telephoto lens. But when this lens dropped, I was super intrigued by it because my 16-35 or 17-28 matched up with the wide end. And then on the long end, 150 millimeters matched up perfectly with the 150-500 or 200-600 millimeter lens, basically removing the entire need to have a 24-70 and a 70-100 to cover those ranges. If you shoot anything travel related or are a run and gun commercial shooter, you know, having this type of versatility is basically unmatched. You can start shooting in that medium to wide and get all the way up into those longer telephoto ranges without even having to move, allowing you to get unique perspectives with ease, basically. To me, this lens gives me everything I wanted out of a 70-200, but also the possibility to pull out to 35 millimeters to create those establishing shots. For my use cases, that's basically covering me for landscapes, lifestyle, as well as some wildlife, and then of course, detail shots. My second favorite thing about this lens is the aperture range, along with that insane focal range. I'm somebody that generally likes to shoot at a lower aperture if possible for light and aesthetic reasons. So having this lens start at f2 at 35 millimeters practically gives me the usability of a 35 millimeter prime or close there too. But then with the added bonus of 115 millimeters, that's all under f2.8. Then when you look at the other end of the spectrum, 150 millimeters at 2.8 really gives you a lot of depth of field, especially if you want to separate a subject from the background. You get really beautiful bokeh and a really nice creamy backdrop. So now I'm going to take use of this beautiful Rocky Mountain backdrop as well as my truck, and I'm going to shoot all the way through the different focal lengths from 35 millimeters up to 150 to truly show you the versatility of this lens. From my experience, this lens has provided me awesome image quality and sharpness all the way through the focal length, even stop down as low as possible. As I said, I'm also an outdoor and adventure photographer, so I'm often shooting in less than desirable conditions. So if you can imagine this environment with snow and negative 45 degrees Celsius, this lens has handled it all as well as bumps and tumbles and is still shooting perfectly fine. For this lens, I don't really find many cons myself. But something I think you guys might think about is the size and weight, especially when you compare it to something like a 24-70. It's definitely a bit more hefty, but to show you guys kind of what it looks like compared to some other lenses, I'm going to do a little comparison with a bunch of other lenses in my kit, and I'll also put up the weights for each of the lenses so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like to some other more traditional lenses. The 35 to 150 millimeter lens has quickly become one of my favorite lenses just based off the versatility. I'm sure you can see how highly I talk about it, but it covers so many bases, especially if I just want to take one lens with me when I'm traveling. Something that I found that I was missing when I was shooting on a 24 to 70 or something like that was just being able to quickly zoom in and get out there further. Basically, I love to capture wildlife, and one of the reasons I didn't often shoot on a 24-70 while traveling is because when I'm out in an environment like this and some piece of wildlife comes up quickly, I just couldn't reach it. But with this lens, I have that added focal length of basically another 70+ millimeters to quickly flick my wrist, and then I'm out there. And while it's not a 200 to 600 or something like that, it gives me quite a lot more reach, and I can definitely capture birds and especially large mammals when I get the opportunity. And to me, being able to show wildlife in these environments or when I'm traveling somewhere new, it really adds a whole nother side to the story. So that's super important to me. I'm also a full-time photographer, so I'm often reaching for this lens when I'm shooting for brands or tourism boards, and being able to capture so much versatility in one lens kind of takes a lot of pressure off of me choosing lenses and taking the time to change lenses while I'm shooting. I can sit in one spot and capture my establishing shots. So say that we're shooting this truck, I can capture the truck in the environment, as well as zoom in and capture details basically without moving. Of course, I'm still gonna have to put some work in, but it does take a lot of thinking out of that process. Just to give you an idea to see how this lens fits into my kit personally, here's a look into my camera bag. I generally carry either a Tamron 20 to 40 millimeter lens or a 17 to 28, which basically covers me up perfectly to the 35 millimeter end of the 35 to 150, which is my intermediate lens. And then from there, I either carry a 150 to 500 by Tamron or a 200 to 600 millimeter by Sony. So that gives me effectively a coverage from 17 millimeters all the way up to 600 millimeters with just 3 lenses, which is pretty crazy. If I had to do this with a 24 to 70 and 70 to 200 combo, I'd have to have a full another lens in my bag. And if you add those lenses together, they are definitely larger than one lens as the 35 to 150. If I were to do that with a 24 to 70 and 70 to 200 combo, I'd have to have a full another lens in my bag. And if you add those lenses, weight and size together, it definitely takes up more space than just having this one lens, even with the larger weight and size of the 35 to 150. So if I could make a recommendation for who this lens was for, I really think a lot of people could benefit from shooting on the 35 to 150, especially if they want to consolidate their kit or change things up. But the way that I think that people are perceiving it online, it seems that people think it is more of an event and lifestyle or portrait lens. But for me as an outdoor and travel photographer, it has really fit so many different needs in my shooting process. If you're somebody that likes to shoot on zoom lenses and are looking maybe for that one size fits all lens, this really hits the mark in a lot of places. You can capture everything from wider landscape shots all the way up into tight portraits or street photography if you want to zoom across the street and stuff like that. So for somebody that maybe wants to just carry one lens when they're traveling on a trip, something that I do all the time is just popping this in my bag and maybe a wide angle to cover that other thing. But a lot of times I just go ahead with this. Really just kind of covers all of the bases that I need. My final thoughts are that gear is not everything, but sometimes there is a piece of gear that can really change things up. And the way that things have been for so long is shooting a 24 to 70 and 70 to 200. So I think if people want to change the way that they're shooting or kind of try something different, that this could be a really great option. I'm out here today shooting and I could probably get away with shooting purely just on this one lens. So for me, especially with all of the type of stuff that I get into shooting, it has really kind of changed my workflow. And coming from shooting just primes in the past and things like that, I really love to have the versatility in one thing. It takes away a lot of the thinking that I have to do when I'm changing lenses or the analysis paralysis of looking at my bag and it's like, oh, what am I gonna do? I can just pop on one lens and kind of just get shooting. And to me, just being able to get out there and capture and with basically little to no thought and just get into the process, the more that I can do that, the better that the imagery is going to become.